This is For Advisors by Advisors. I'm your host, Evan J. Mayer, and today we have a very special guest, Mr. Spencer Carpenter.
Thank you, Evan.
How you doing, Spence?
Awesome. Very good. How are you?
I'm getting better at my extensions on the last name, like Carpenter.
I love that.
Yeah. Anyway, Spencer's been in the financial services business since 2005. Is that right?
2006, 2005.
2006. Yeah, I had that down. And he's been with only really two banks his entire career.
That's correct.
It's an interesting story. It's a very similar story to my story. We joined and we left at different times.
Correct.
And I always like to say the story of how I met Spencer. Spencer was a junior advisor when I was a normal advisor. And at one point, you worked with me under a few branches. You worked under a different financial advisor for a longer period of time until you got your shot. And then you became a financial advisor.
Correct.
So
2009, 2008.
So 2008, 2009 is
Yeah.
when you became an actual true advisor.
Right.
We'll call it.
Sure.
Prior to that, you were good. You were fixed annuities and running around the
20
different
branches or so at a time.
20 branches. So give us your story. Give us a little about your background in the business and your history.
Yeah, absolutely. I started with Bank Atlantic, which is where we met. And with Bank Atlantic, they had this licensed banker program. So I got hired as an assistant manager on the bank side, learned the ropes, understood the systems, figured out how the bankers do business, understanding what's important to them and what they despised. So then from there, a person that we both know got me licensed as far as the 215 and all the insurance ratings I needed to become one of the licensed bankers in that market. At the time, they had 100 licensed bankers.
That program was new. You were one of the first in it, right?
That was the first time they ever did that.
Yeah.
So it was, this may not last, so get in while you can. And this is exactly why I wanted to be with that program, because that's exactly how I wanted to get in the business. Learn it the hard way and then get licensed and learn and have the growing pains that come with the business. So anyways, about a year or so later, we went from having one branch to having 2, 3, 4, 5 or more. That's when we started working together. And then ultimately, happy to say I wound up becoming the number one advisor in that group of the 100 in the company.
That was awesome.
Yeah, so that was a big deal for me at the time.
Just going back to that era we were in, we were limited a little bit on the products. And Jessica Atkinson came in.
Yeah.
She was running the licensed banker program. She was awesome.
Amazing.
And Jeff Callen was running the entire program and did an awesome job as well.
Sure.
So, you had so many offices to cover, but at the end of the day, the product set and what you were actually doing for clients was really more doing CDs for clients, right? Like by all accounts.
Yeah, absolutely. At that time, we're talking the rates were substantially higher than they were the last 10 years in our career. So this was an amazing opportunity to get into the business, find those relationships that were the low-hanging fruit as far as they were not serviced well or they were just neglected, and then bring those clients and say, hey, I was your banker last week. I'm officially licensed this week. I've helped you for the last 3 years or so. Let me see what I can do on this side of the fence now.
Yeah, and that was a whole different relationship with the client. They viewed you in a different light too.
Absolutely. So that rapport I already built was a humongous rocket on my back, where I'm meeting these clients that I already knew. It wasn't like a new relationship. It was, I've known Spencer since 2006. Of course I'll do business with you. So that helped me tremendously.
And during that time, you're a licensed banker. How long were you an actual licensed banker for before the financial advisor role?
Man, it's tough to say. There was an official point where, Jeff kind of said, hey, you got to pick a team right now. You can't do both. And I would say at least a year and a half, 2 years, maybe.
I don't remember quite. Did the program change where you had to choose between staying as a licensed banker or being an FA?
Yeah. And I tried to go as long as I could to build that book to where when I went and took that leap of faith, I had more than enough under management to where something's always going to be happening for me. And that was the hardest change. And so glad I did it. I was in my 20s at the time. So, married with our son was maybe 1 or 2 at the time. It was very, very risky to go from the guaranteed money to the, hey, this is your relationships. If you take care of them well enough, they'll pay you. If not, you don't get paid.
So one, you had a salary, one you didn't.
Yes, exactly right. And that was a big change, and it was worth it.
But I also remember me and you, there was other advisors that were basically getting the credit for what you produced. And me and you have talked a lot about that in the past. And that probably got you a little bit too. You were like, hey, I'm out here producing as a licensed banker.
Sure.
But I'm not getting the credit that I should get either.
Yeah, that was hard, but it was worth it because that motivated me that much more. At some point, if you work 6 days a week and everyone else is working 4 or 5, the numbers you produce will overcome the other numbers in that area. So I definitely made it my mission to say, let me go from where I'm at to being, there's no way I can be denied to be the guy who becomes promoted to the FA role. And like I said, out of the 100 bankers, I think they only promoted 2.
I meant more because your credit was actually being given to an actual financial advisor, not other licensed bankers.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
That probably bothered you a little bit.
It did, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's part of the growing pains that come with the business. I didn't expect to come in and just be the guy. So
Yeah. Well, and you learned something from it too.
Oh God, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is important.
Very.
So when BB&T came in, there was the announcement. I remember driving into work. I was driving into there was an office off of Federal and Glades. For those of you out of Florida, this is a specific location. I remember a friend of mine called me and was like, "Hey, you guys just got bought." And I remember like, the reason is that prior to that, like I had rejoined back with the bank about 2 years earlier and changed my practice model.
Right.
And when I did, Boca was a new area for me. And I remember getting that call going, what's this going to look like? But also somewhat excited because it was a new, bigger bank.
Mm-hmm.
When did you hear that announcement and what was your initial?
I think it was you that texted me. I was getting ready for work. I'm in the mirror shaving, 7 o'clock in the morning. And then, hey, we just got bought, turn on CNBC. And I'm like, do I go to work? I have appointments today. Or what does that mean? So it was insane. We didn't know what was going to happen. And I showed up to work at 9 o'clock.
And you were newly a financial advisor, right?
Yeah.
How many months were you a financial advisor when that had taken
I
place?
feel like that announcement was made in like 2010 or 2011. And maybe a year or less.
A year.
Yeah,
Okay.
It was very terrifying at that point, honestly. Yeah, it was very, okay, does this mean, what does this mean? We have is our manager. Who is who right now?
Yeah, and you were so used to the bank, and I was so used to that bank. It was a great
amazing.
institution
man.
in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I remember when that got announced, we all met with the new boss at the time, and it was Joe Hage.
Yeah. Very good.
And Joey Hage I still talk to all the time. Joe Hage I haven't spoke to a lot, but I remember one of the nicest things he ever did for me, Joe did, was, you know, they kind of took me into a side room, and they're like, he's doing managed money. He's doing it for higher net worth clients. You're probably not going to fit into this program the way you should. And
I remember that day.
He said it in a very good way.
Yes.
And that was the day that I said, okay, I got to go. And I think the minimum was you could only deal with clients that were $250,000 net worth or below.
Yeah, that was the problem.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. So when BB&T eventually came in and those rules were in place, and again, the larger dollars went to Scott and Stringfellow, which is a separate broker dealer.
Correct.
You were still just happy to be there in the role, right?
Yeah. So the timing was weird because I went from saying I'm going to take this leap of faith and go from the guarantee salary and then the business that came with being an advisor to saying now I just want to be an advisor. I just want to focus on my practice and build these relationships.
Yeah.
And then within a year's time, everything changed. So Bank Atlantic did not have this monster ceiling as an FA that I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
So now I feel like there's this ceiling going back over, and it's really insulting to an advisor to be told, hey, you can only work with a client with this much money. It's like your intelligence.
Especially when the amount wasn't like.
It wasn't a high number.
Yeah, the bar was pretty low.
It's like your intelligence peaks at this dollar. I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So that complicated the business, obviously. And same thing, like you said, you left at that point. So then,
But you didn't leave right away.
Yeah, I stuck it out. I said, this might work. Like you said, this could be a good thing. It's a much bigger bank. We went from being a tiny bank to being, I think, the 15th largest in the country, somewhere in that range. And then I did 2 strong years there, built my book. The benefit is I had the Bank Atlantic relationships who were still BB&T clients at this point. So now I'm several years in. Now it's 06 to 2000.
Because there was no other BB&T down here at the time, right?
The footprint was purchased by buying Bank Atlantic.
It was yeah. So literally, literally all the people you knew in the office, all your centers of influence were the same exact people.
Oh, it was wonderful. All the bankers, we grew up together, and I met them in 23 years old. And now we're still doing business together, still referring clients to me, different name on the door. So the clients were reluctant because of the brand, but they were not reluctant because of us.
Yeah, and that kept the business flowing.
It was wonderful, yeah.
So you made it all the way until 2014. You actually stuck around for what, maybe 2.5 years during that.
That's correct.
When did you say, now I should go? What made you take that leap of faith? What was the chain of events?
A lot of things. At that point, I was in my early 30s still. So that's a great time to say, are you committed to this forever, or are you ready to do something bigger than where you are? So when that ceiling was presented, and I said, look, I can't see myself 10 years from now being told my intelligence peaks at this dollar amount to invest. I was in constant contact with you and other people who went to other firms. And then we spoke with our manager at the time, Joe, the other Joe.
Shout out Joe Lucchini.
Joe Lucchini, yep, absolutely. And then we spoke for probably 8 to 9 months. And then finally, I realized that there was no handcuffs. There was no ceiling. It was a use your personality in your practice. This is your business. You run it the way you're supposed to. And your clients already love you. So their chances are that they're going to follow you.
And talk a little bit about you grew up in the bank. We talked to Nick Nielsen. I don't know if you got to hear that podcast. Where, you know, he grew up as a teller and kind of worked himself along those lines.
Sure.
You did that too. Now you're going to a brand new bank where nobody knows you.
Yeah.
But how it is to be a personal banker, a licensed banker, a teller, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to establish those relationships? And what did you do to kind of get to know the people around you?
That's the best part of the business to me. The relationship is like an extension of your family for the most part. We either should be together or we shouldn't. And at some point, when you put in enough days, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, and you meet the bankers and you meet the clients, you either click with them or you don't. And it's up to you to say, I'm going to follow up with them and make sure they know I care about them. I'm going to wish them a happy birthday. I'm going to check on them and see how that graduation was for their grandchild. And then from there, it's an authentic relationship because you really do care about that person. So I can't say it was a struggle for me. I really naturally enjoy the company of people I like. And it does come natural. And I never really struggled building relationships. It was being able to apply the practice to the relationship to where there's a defining line of I'm here and I care about you as a person, but I handle, and I'm the steward of this aspect of your life. I handle your money and I'm your guy. If you need anything, call me.
So how many branches were you initially given when you joined SunTrust?
So I went from having 9 at BB&T to going down to 3.
But the different, I think there is a main difference there was the 9, they had sales goals, but they were very low. It was like you did a $50,000, you brought in $50,000 of AUM.
Yeah.
That was like one branch's net yearly goal.
Yeah, the deposit base at SunTrust was higher directly across the street. You know, you have a branch with $30 million on one firm and the other one has $150 million. So you could do a lot more with less. And for me, it made more sense because that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted to spend more time with the individual. I wanted more quantity. I wanted to close the door and say, this is my only client. I don't have any more clients right now. This is my only client. But when you have 9 branches or too much to run around with by yourself, it's really impossible to build that relationship and keep it.
Did that allow you to build the relationships with the bankers even quicker because you didn't have to jump around all over the place?
We were friends. I have friends that now I can say they're emergency contacts in my phone. We are legit friends. We hang out on the weekends. Do you
still have any of those same locations?
I do actually.
Yeah.
So now as you fast forward, I don't want to skip ahead, but you can say what happens next, Spencer, in your story. Well, what happens next is I'm doing really good at SunTrust, building those relationships, brought in my Bank Atlantic / BB&T client relationships. And then, son of a gun, hey, guess what?
Well, let's not go there yet. Okay,
there you go.
So you're at Sun, and initially you brought over a pretty small book of business as far as clients go.
It was average size, It was pretty decent at the time,
What would you say? What was the AUM you think you brought over?
It took over the course of a year and a half. I don't know. Maybe it was more than 70 million, 60 million maybe.
So, that much.
Yeah, it was. It wound up being a lot more at the end because some people were making sure I wasn't going to leave and go somewhere else. So they came.
But some of it was dead money and it was transactional money.
Yeah, some of that couldn't be. There wasn't much you could do with it at the time.
So I remember like when me and you were at SunTrust, you were pretty much 100% transactional at the point you had joined there.
Right.
And then we talked a lot about fee-based business or trails. I think initially you started just doing more C shares and kind of just trying to trail business and try to get that rate of yield. Talk a little bit about that transgression.
Yeah, that was difficult because, like I said, at the early 30s, you can go 100 miles an hour, which makes you think you can do that forever, which is not realistic. So to have the desire to have more quality, not quantity, as far as relationships go, transactional is not the way to sustain your practice. I figured that out after years and years of trying to be the guy who could work 6 days a week. Didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So then the transition, as we did have many conversations about it, was extremely painful. And then I slowly started to convert and have much more fee-based business. The market was doing well, so the timing was good to transition. And then I made that full force change probably between 2017 and maybe 18.
2017 and 18.
Yeah.
So at that time, I believe you had joined Tom and Lindsay's team, right?
Yeah.
They had created that team.
Around the time, yeah.
So talk a little bit about that, because it's always a leap of faith that you have to take when you're joining an established team.
Yeah.
Sometimes it can work out, sometimes it can. In your case, it didn't work out.
Yeah.
But it
For the most
actually,
part, yeah.
it kind of worked out at the end.
Yeah,
So talk a little bit about how, like, you were on your own, and then how did that start?
Yeah.
And then talk about your time there, and then how that ended.
Yeah, so our manager, made it clear we were going into a new year, and he said, we want to make sure that every assistant has so much management, or she has so many advisors that she works with.
Yep.
So I was trying to transition to be a more fee-based advisor
Yep.
at a time where a certain level of production produced a certain level of assistance. So it made sense to say, who would be less likely to have conflict with at the time to partner with and be able to work together and have an exclusive assistant with. And that made sense. We didn't have any major issues as far as personality traits or whatnot.
And you guys were all in the same little area there.
Yeah, we covered from Jupiter to as far south as West Palm.
Okay.
So we covered and helped each other out. As far as overlap, there was none. Ultimately, it worked out for a couple years, and they decided to go to a different firm, and I did not want to go at the time. And I still, I'm happy where I'm at.
Did you guys break prior to that? Did you break prior to them leaving?
No.
Okay.
No.
You were still part of the team when they made that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. They made the decision to leave, and I was still a part of the team. So for me, I'm at the point where I'm taking off now. Now it's really picking up for me. I made the transition. I had the dedicated assistant, so I didn't have to hope and share her with someone else. So it didn't make sense for me to have put in that many years at Bank Atlantic, BB&T, SunTrust, and then now switch as I'm starting to pick up some serious steam.
Yeah. So yeah, just telling the side of the story. So we had both left BB&T. I actually left them prior. You had left them after.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden that announcement comes again,
Yeah.
which actually was funny. At the time, it scared me more than anybody.
Mhm.
And I think it did because I just remember that I had to leave,
Right.
and I didn't want to leave per se. I was at Sun. I was still happy at the time. I was building a book. My book was pretty big at that point. I think I was the #1 producer in South Florida for the team at that point. I was there, other than maybe some of
The teams.
the private banker teams. Yeah. Then they started adding the teams together, and I always thought that was unfair.
3 versus 1.
Yeah, I always thought that was unfair. But I remember I left. When you heard of that situation, what was like your thoughts?
The situation of the next merger?
The next merger, yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I text you that morning. And I think I said, every time you hear that this firm is coming, you leave me.
I think you did say that. Yeah.
And it was one of the stories of, is this good for me again, or is this bad for me? And that's what came of it, is I got to realize, once again, I always try things to make sure I don't make a split decision.
Yep.
And what happened was I wound up, I think, benefiting more than anybody in the entire firm, because now you're talking about a merger of BB&T, which has the Bank Atlantic legacy.
Yep.
And then SunTrust, which I've been here now, I was there at the time 6 or so years. So now you've got people I met in 2006 from another firm, and the people that I've built relationships with at the new firm. And now I'm 17 years in with some of these relationships at this point.
Yeah, so it was actually a cool thing for you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were probably fearful, though.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Like who's going to win? Who's going to?
What firm is really going to be in charge of the practice or the platform?
So at that point, that announcement gets done. Now, Tom and Lindsay leave at some point.
Right.
When they leave, right? Do you know that's going to happen?
Not exactly. We kind of talked about it. It was always a situation where this may not work. We'll see what happens. And it was really more of a, do we want to do this together, or am I going to just take off? And for what it's worth, I think they did what's best for them.
Yeah, so they leave.
Yeah.
This also puts you probably in a good situation of retaining assets. Talk a little bit about like how that worked out.
Yeah, so that worked out. Once again, when some people move out of the way, it creates new opportunities for you.
Yeah.
So I was already doing really well. The story comes where I'm meeting bankers and branches that I had rapport with before, but they were primarily covered by the other advisors. So it wasn't like Jim hired a new person and said, hey, this is your new advisor. This is Spencer. We know this guy.
Yeah.
So it worked out really well. And same thing, I just built those relationships bigger than they were, deeper than they were.
But that gave you a lot bigger, sizable assets under management when that
to
transpired.
a degree. I mean, they took a lot of assets with them. So it wasn't like I acquired a lot.
Yeah.
There was nothing that really came from that story. It was me starting in those banks and saying, hey, I'm the new guy in this space, but I'm not the new guy to you.
And so you took over how many offices at the height of how many branches?
It went, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 probably at the time. Yeah.
And how many do you have now?
I have another partner now with me. So he covers a certain amount and I cover a certain amount. So under my rep, probably 7 or 8. but he covers about 4 or 5. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
So, which is also a really cool part of the transition, right? So
Oh, yeah.
you initially were a licensed banker, you
Yeah.
became a full financial advisor, you worked on your own,
Yeah.
you joined a team to learn something.
Mhm.
That team leaves, you become your own advisor, and now you have a junior advisor.
Yeah, life is good.
So talk a little bit about how that like took place.
That's fairly new. It's been in the last 6 months or so, but we were working at, with the new story, we have this new firm and we have a certain amount of business that we want to accomplish. And we don't want to overextend ourselves. So either I'm going to spend less time with the clients I want to spend time with, or I have to find a way to cover my territory and clone myself or find someone else. So with my Jim and I spent a lot of time trying to find the right person that would be able to come in and be able to make sure nothing changed. Everyone was treated the same way I would treat them. And it's just working out really well. It's been in the last 6 months and he's getting a lot of rhythm with everybody I've already known for years.
Now, is he taking over any of your existing book, or is mostly what he's doing is his new referrals from those offices?
Yeah, it's mostly new referrals, but I'm actually slowly allowing him to work some of the book that I have that I want to make sure they get as much time as they deserve.
Yep.
I don't want them to get lost in the shuffle as I do meet new clients. So I only want to have a certain size book, and I just want to scale it down to where it's perfect, to where no one feels like they're losing by being with me.
Course. And this new advisor is this his first time as a financial advisor, or was
he came from another firm?
And he was a financial advisor at another firm.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he brought some of his clients with him as well.
Uh-huh.
Good. And so knowing how you got treated on a couple of occasions as a junior advisor, now being the senior advisor to those juniors, do you have a different appreciation for it?
Yeah, it's fun because I get to say, this was good. I learned from this person. I learned from that person. I learned from you. I learned from so many different people. And I get to say, I like the way this was handled, but I don't like the way this was handled.
Yeah.
Let me try to be very deliberate with my guy so he doesn't feel a certain kind of way negatively, or where he can feel the success that he deserves when he does achieve it. I don't want him to work his butt off and say, Spencer guy's never happy. I mean, I really killed myself for this. I want him to know I appreciate everything he's doing, and I don't want him to miss any steps along the way, because the truth is our business is a process.
Yep.
If you go in and you wait for the finish line, you'll miss so much important information along the way. The process is more exciting for me than the finish.
Yep.
I love retiring my clients, but I enjoy getting them to retirement more than I love saying, this is an awesome party here. I'm glad your family showed up. I want to do it with you along the way.
And I'm sure there's conversations you have with him that you're like, hey, how you doing? You okay? You're kind of checking in on him, right?
3 times a day.
Yeah, because I think it's a different level of appreciation for something that you had to go through. And you're being very PC, and that's cool, but like not every relationship was like perfect for you. So the fact that works is great. With COVID, I had left the bank channel pre-COVID.
Right.
I've heard many stories that it's definitely slowed down significantly.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that? And if you have, how has the referral flow changed at all, if it has? And is it more cold calls, or is it more warm calls from the premier bankers, or how's that working?
We're past it now. So in 2020, we were actually asked to leave the offices around March.
Yep.
And we were not allowed back in the building till I think July of 2021.
Yeah, a long time.
That's a very long time,
Yeah.
right? So that was where you get to see if you really have the relationship with the client. So the referrals were very much WebEx, phone calls and whatnot, but it was very restrictive on, come on in and see me. I'll be happy to talk to you in the building we met.
Yeah.
So it slowed down for sure, but believe it or not, that was one of the best years I've had, and every year since then has been better. So it allowed me to dig deeper with the clients that I have. The referrals are more quality now, as far as the client being able to say, I really want a relationship with you. I don't want to just give you a CD that matured. They want to bring their 401k over and have someone manage it. They want a financial plan. So we're all doing a better job at spending that time with them. So the branch referrals are slower, but the business has never been better.
Last year was your best year?
Well, yeah, the year. So I broke $1 million last year, and $1 million year before as well.
You broke it the year prior as well.
Let's see, 2021 and 2022. Yeah.
So 21 comes around. By the way, how far did you get to break it in 21? Did you have to wait till December?
Yeah, it was definitely December.
Yeah. And when you hit that number, because for financial advisors, that's normally the dream. And then once you hit it, it's no longer the dream, right? But when you hit that number and you're finally considered in that category, how good did that feel?
That was the best thing that happened to me last year, and 21 as well. You work so many years trying to say, if I can do the right thing and still accomplish this goal, I'm a good advisor. And I did the right thing every time I could. Every single chance I did the right thing.
The funny thing about it is that I personally don't think you can be a $1 million producer and stay as a $1 million producer unless you are starting to do the right things. Last year, how much did you end up finishing with in 22?
1.1, yeah.
Yeah, so you're advancing from that. So
absolutely. And a down year as well with the market.
So now that you've hit that as a revenue number, once I hit $1 million in production, I think it was 2015 is when the first year I hit it.
Yeah.
I don't even look at revenue anymore. It's not nearly as important. I actually focus on the relationships, but more importantly, the AUM kind of tells you how you're doing.
Of course.
What do you focus on now? Is AUM the number one thing you focus on? Is it still revenue that you're looking at?
I kind of go the same way. I don't really look at what I'm doing day to day. I don't really care. I want to say, when I go to sleep at night, did I take care of everything that I had in my checklist? I have an entire list of things to accomplish every day. And if I didn't, I have to carry those 2 or 3 items to the next day. And it's going to be whatever it's going to be. It's either going to happen for me or it's not. But if I took care of everybody and the revenue follows, wonderful. If it doesn't, it wasn't meant for me.
Now, me and you have talked about leaderboards a lot, right? Like that always motivated me. I actually remember when I joined the bank in 2012, there was no way for me to compete on a revenue standpoint. It was really to compete on a growing fee-based business. So I remember Tom and Lindsay, we actually had a bet going. It was me and my old partner at the time, and versus the two of them. And then me and my old partner had split during the middle of the contest. So I think
disqualification.
I think I won anyway.
Oh, really?
I think so. I think I won anyway, but I'm not positive on it. And I'll hear from them if that's not the case. But I believe I did. And then as I kind of got through that hurdle and I wasn't no more focused on that, then it was like coming up the leaderboard. And then when I hit number 1 on the leaderboard, that was like a phenomenal day. And then when I did it for like 2 years in a row, I was like, all right, well, now what do I focus on?
New goals.
Yeah. So I know you focus on the leaderboard. How'd you end up finishing last year?
I mean, I did pretty well. I think I was in the top 5 or so in my area. Yeah. I can't say for sure.
How many total?
I really don't even check it as much as I used to. Like you said, I don't know, because there's a different division, like you said, with Scott and Stringfellow or with our group. But as far as individuals, I was in the top 5.
Yeah, top 5. So that's great. Like you're hitting that number, and then, everybody's going to hate you when you get to number 1. It's what happens, right? Like everybody wants to get the guy that's at number 1.
Did something wrong to get here.
Yeah. What did he do? Does he have too many branches? Jim likes him too much. Or what?
Something's not right here.
It can't be you just work really hard and your clients respect you.
That's not possible.
Yeah,
that's not possible.
That won't work. So as far as referral flow goes, they've changed that in banks, multiple times as far as crediting goes, and we won't talk about specifics because I don't think that's right too, but it's interesting every year when they do come out with whatever the bank's goals are going to be. How important is investment management compared to deposits or loans? So that was something I always paid a lot of attention to because it was interesting to see how that compensation structure worked, because it was never perfect. There was always going to be flaws. The question was, how close did they get it that year? With the bank merging, do they have, I know in the beginning it was hard for them to have goals because you didn't know who you were kind of working with. Has that all started to?
It's real now. So before it was, we're in the middle of a pandemic. It's okay. Do your best for the bankers, right?
Yep.
And then slowly but surely they're, okay, you guys did really good despite what was happening. I think you could do more.
Yeah.
You know what happens from there. So ultimately those goals become dynamic. And then the stress is really felt by the bankers because they have so many buckets they have to hit. We could be or not be as an important bucket for them. But for us, once, like we said earlier, the relationships, they don't mind saying, this doesn't make any sense. This client deserves some help. And this is what Spencer does best. He does wealth management. I don't care about the bucket over here today because this is what this guy deserves. So it goes back to that conversation about relationships, but the buckets and the goals are higher than I've ever seen ever because once again, BB&T was like the 15th largest. Now I think Truist is like the 6th largest in the country now.
Yep. So it gives them a big opportunity.
Oh yeah.
So you're in that driver's seat now. You're the guy. You're the guy in your area, right? You're the guy leading the charge. Obviously there's some bit larger teams and things along those lines, but where is Spencer in 5 years from now and 10 years from now? Where do you see yourself?
I definitely am enjoying teaching my new guy. I see myself possibly bringing in a couple more, maybe 1 or 2 more people once we feel like we've got a synergy that we need to have. Once we're on the exact same page, I can go to sleep and say, I know for sure that this guy's going to do exactly what I would do with this client down the line, right? So I could see that. And then I'm doing a really good job with my COIs. I don't even know if even 50% of my new business comes from the branch anymore. I meet one person, an attorney or a doctor or something. And next thing you know, I'm 3 referrals in and I'm trying to remember who sent this first guy. So I definitely see myself spending more time out of the office, building those relationships and letting my guys come in and do a really good job at covering the territory.
Do you see yourself moving up into that private wealth role where you're not actually in the branches and your guys are just in the branches?
I don't know, possibly. I really still enjoy it. I still love getting up and just meeting new people. Like I really enjoy it. So a part of that makes me nervous to where I'll have less opportunities to meet new people. And I feel like it's the best job in the world. I mean, I get,
like, don't give it up yet.
Yeah, right? I'm still having a blast. I don't want to give that up.
I think that'll come. It'll come once you hit certain AUM numbers.
Possibly.
You get to that level. But I do know we speak probably once every month, and you're very happy where you're at, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm not upset. I love what I do, and I love that you get the responsibility for someone to say, I'm taking off of work. And I'm going to spend time with this guy, and this is the person I choose to manage my wealth. Like, that's a big responsibility, and you have to take that for what it is and make sure that client knows that you're as dedicated a year from now, 10 years from now, as you are in day one when you wanted to earn their business.
So give us the pitch to financial advisors that are coming in the business that are considering joining the banking channel. We talked a lot about why to join the independent channel, or the wirehouses obviously in a lot of ways are dying. It's more about getting a check with them. But when it comes to the banking channel, give your pitch.
Oh man, it's a really tough one because it's such a weird story, because it started off with, I want to be an advisor. I want to be an advisor. But during that process, the bank channel paid for my master's degree. The bank channel got me in front of clients I would have never run into at a wirehouse. Yeah. Right. I met a lot of intelligent, like strong bankers, strong advisors along the way. That experience that I had is priceless. So I don't think you can duplicate that anywhere but the way I came up. The things that were challenging for me made me who I am. The things that were wonderful for me made me who I am. So I really feel that anyone who says something negative about the bank channel probably didn't do it right. They probably weren't making those relationships like they should. Yep. And I don't know if they stayed long enough for it to pop off for them, honestly. I think there's opportunity everywhere, and it's there if you want it.
It's also, in my opinion, it's the relationship with the bankers. Absolutely. Did they focus on that? Was that, how did they focus on that? Sure. Kind of important thing. Yeah. Advice to newer advisors coming in, is the bank channel the way to go? And nowadays, do they need to join with a seasoned advisor? Is that the better approach?
If you can't come in and say, I'm going to have X amount of assets under management within 2 to 3 years, it's a very dangerous business to try to get in and say, no matter what happens, the market drops 40% next year, I can survive. Are you sure? Yeah. You might want to say, if I can build the book as much as I can and then let them take the training wheels off, then maybe I can stay. But if not, I think there's a lot of benefit in being on a team. You get to learn from a lot of people, and then they will help you. They don't want you to fail. They'll say, this is an opportunity that you can take. Go ahead and take that relationship. I want you to be successful.
Absolutely. And by all accounts, the bank channel has the ability to get you in front of people, which is always just a phenomenal aspect. But you got to join the right team. We've seen people come in, join teams, and then fizzle out.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. And that's what the endurance you have will decide if you're here in 5 years or not, or 10 years from now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
Cool.
Any last piece of advice for advisors out there, something that you've been doing or something in your practice that's maybe unique that other advisors are not doing that you think they could learn from?
Yeah, I think there's this fear of, if it doesn't come as a bank advisor, if it doesn't come from the bank, then I'm not supposed to do it. I think there's a story to be said that you're at work every day, whether you're at home, whether you're at a baseball game, or wherever you are at work. So if you are the same guy at home and you are the same guy at work, you really don't have to transition or be somebody you're not. So I try to be the same guy every day, be the guy you say you are. And then when people see you out, they acknowledge you and they say, this is my advisor. This is somebody you need to meet. This is my brother. He's here with me at the grocery store. Be the guy you say you're going to be. Always deliver at the highest level possible and never, ever give up. Because there was a lot of times where it was tough. It was extremely tough. But my best advice would be, make sure you know where you want to be, like you said, in 5 years or 10 years. Because if you have that written down, you have that goal in mind, it's going to be hard for you to say, I don't want that goal anymore. Yeah, you do. You still want it. You wrote it down.
Yeah.
You just gave up too soon. That's what happened.
Absolutely. Spencer, it was a pleasure to have you on. If somebody wants to reach out to you, they're interested in potentially looking at the bank channel, and you're the current reigning bank champion.
I don't know about that,
when I left, I gave it to you. So.
Oh, well, I'll take it. Thank you. Fair enough.
How can they get a hold of you? They can message you on LinkedIn or something?
LinkedIn is the best way to get me, yeah.
Awesome. Fantastic.
Absolutely. Thanks, Evan.
Hopefully you guys enjoyed today, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.